we are also going to be covering the talents, and for the most part, just like that last video, most of the talents are exactly the same. The only thing different really is they've been slightly moved around within the talent tree. So the build I'm going to be kind of rocking and taking a look at right now is going to be Bursting Swords, Blighted Rune Weapon, Unholy Frenzy, Infected Claws, and Defiled, which is going to give me a lot of melee AoE cleave, probably one of my more favorite specs when playing an Unholy Death Knight, at least in the PvE settings. So we're going to go ahead and dot up these two targets right now. We're going to throw up D&D, we're going to melee, and we're going to start exploding our AoE. And you see there was a lot of damage coming out. And obviously you saw from that Death Strike that Unholy Death Knights have the same amount of healing capability as a Frost Death Knight, which is something that definitely used to set Unholy and Frost Death Knights apart, is Frost Death Knights had the big IBF healing crit, and Unholy DKs didn't have nearly as much healing at the time, but they did have Corpse Shield to make up for it. But as you can see, Unholy DKs now have the same amount of healing as Frost DKs, and we've got Corpse Shield. So Unholy DKs at the moment are looking pretty beast as far as survivability and just mechanical stability altogether. I would definitely have to put them on a much higher level or a much higher balance than Frost DKs. Also considering how much CC they have. Plus we just saw a 2.4k crit, which wasn't a huge crit obviously. We saw about 3.4 thousand coming off of Frost Strikes on a Frost DK. Took quite a bit of prep to get there. But for some reason you can't raise dead yet. Is there like a built-in global 1 minute cooldown every time your ad dies? Because like I don't see it on raise dead. There it is. It just popped off right there. So does that mean raise dead if your little guy dies, you're not able to re-res him until after the fight? Because that's kind of interesting if that's what they did. It would make fighting an Unholy DK on a lot of classes a bit easier than, of course, killing their pet and all of a sudden they pop their pet back up instantly, and it was kind of like you just wasted your time. Now, I was referring to Unholy DKs being on kind of a higher tier of mechanical strength and stability as Frost DKs, and the obvious reasons come from Sledge Butcher and Asphyxiate, since of course an Asphyxiate's a 5-second on-call stun that you can use at any time at 20-yard range, really strong, especially compared to the old Remorseless Winter. And obviously we got Sledge Butcher, which can stun the target and grip the target, and then we have our Mind Freeze and Grip, which are also interrupts. So talking interrupts, an Unholy DK has a total right now of 4 interrupts basically. They've also got the ability to have 2 stuns. If you take Asphyxiate, you can get Goofy Ghoul, which also puts you back at 4 interrupts being able to use. Also multiple stuns. The other nice thing about using Goofy Ghoul over Sledge Butcher, let's say a rogue opens up on you in the wild, your Goofy Ghoul's behind you, you can stun the rogue from behind with your Goofy Ghoul, and that'll give you some time to actually reopen on the rogue and come back into it, which is a lot of mechanical strength, kind of like the level 58 talent Clawing Shadows. And the reason I'm discussing a lot of more of the PvP aspects is PvP is going to come into a play a lot more in this expansion than it did before, because there's going to be those PvP instances where we got to be fairly good at PvP to quest through the areas, fight off all the other people, get our quest done, and get advanced rewards compared to just the PvE side of things. So that's going to be really cool. So there's going to be a lot of PvE builds slash PvP builds coming out within this expansion, and of course mechanical strength is really going to come into play. As a Frost DK right now, if a rogue were to open up on you, honestly, like, I don't know how you would fight him off. Like, he'd open up on you, deal a bunch of DPS, Cloak of Shadows, re-invis. The question is, it would have to come down really to Death Strike. Can we hit the rogue with our Death Strike? And if we don't hit the rogue, are we still going to get the healing capabilities from it? Because if we don't, we're going to be back in that same situation where Frost Death Knights are kind of left out high and dry. And one of the reasons why Asphyxiate was so good for, let's say, fighting rogues is the stun, at least as far back as I can remember, wasn't considered a magical ability, it was considered a physical ability. So it would go right through, you know, Cloak of Shadows or something like that, and it would stun the target. Yeah, it's definitely a physical ability with that stun, because it's a red circle and not a blue circle. It's not a magical ability that you can dispel. So Unholy DKs in that sense alone are going to have a lot more mechanical strength and stability to fight inside world PvP combat. I mean, that's disregarding the fact, of course, of how strong Army of the Dead is, how strong Summon Gargoyle is, and